Naaman leans down into that water, acknowledging, I can't heal myself. Hey, y'all, welcome back to the NIV Application Bible Podcast. I've really enjoyed being on this journey with you. Thank you for hanging out with us. We're in 2 Kings today. Before we dive into this story, I want to tell you one of my own. Happened a long time ago, but I'll never forget it. I was probably in my 30s, and I was teaching the Bible at a women's conference, and I was talking about grace, about God's unmerited favor, that our relationship with God isn't something we earn by good behavior. It's a gift from God. Really, the only thing we bring to the table is the cognizance that we can't make it to ourselves, that we need a Messiah. And I shared this message, and at the end, there were maybe 500 women at the event, and I was out on the foyer talking to a bunch of women, and one of the leaders of this particular event stood and watched me for a long time, and then when I was by myself and the women had kind of all gone out in the parking lot to leave, she walked up and she said, "That was a very good message." She was a lot older than I was, had a lot more authority. And I said, "Well, thank you so much." And she said, "I think it was very good for them." And I was like, "Oh, well, yes, ma'am." And she said, "They need grace. I actually do not." And I thought she was teasing me. And so I started to laugh. And then I realized by that stone cold expression on her face, she actually was speaking what she thought was true. She thought she had gotten to the point in life that she no longer needed God's unmerited favor, that she had earned her standing with God. And I thought, man, I'd love to talk to your husband and children. 2 Kings chapter 5. Now Naaman was commander of the army of the king of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. In other words, he looked great on the outside, but his body was deteriorating, and he was anxious enough about leprosy, which is the oldest recorded disease in biblical history, highly contagious and debilitating, that he asked his king if he could go to Israel because he heard that Israel had a God who had power to heal. And his king says, okay. He goes to the king of Israel, and the king of Israel, this is in verse 7, read the letter from his king, tore his robes and said, "Am I God?" In other words, oh, yikers, I don't have the power to heal you. And so he was sent to the prophet Elisha. So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to say to him, "Go, wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed." But Naaman went away angry and said, "I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the spot and cure me of my leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar," I'm not sure if I pronounced those rivers correctly, so if you're from the Middle East, please forgive me if I massacred them. Anyway, "are not these rivers of Damascus," verse 12, "better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed?" So he turned and went off in a rage. Naaman's servants went to him and said, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, 'Wash and be cleansed'?" So he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had told him. And his flesh was restored and became clean like that of a young boy. Then Naaman and all his attendants went back to the man of God. He stood before him and said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel." So you've got this guy with a lot of pride, maybe not unlike that woman I met all those years ago, who kind of thinks he can do it on his own. And he says to Elijah, "Really? You're going to have me rinse myself in the muddy Jordan?" First time I went to Israel in 1997. I remember being just taken aback by how small the Jordan was. It just wasn't that impressive. Our Tennessee River here is much more impressive. And that's effectively what Naaman says. "Really? You're going to have me rinse myself in that muddy water? I mean, we've got beautiful, clear streams back in my country of Damascus. I could do a double gainer in one of those and everybody would clap. And that's exactly the point. God has this great man do something that is just so mundane. He has to strip off his armament. So everybody watching sees the sores on his body. He no longer looks so impressive. And then he dips in that muddy Jordan once. Can you imagine the crowd watching? If it were to take place today, everybody would be, doing Insta Reels, FaceTime living. There's this dude, he's a really impressive guy. He thinks he can be healed if he dips in the Tennessee. If he dips in the Tennessee and he dips, he comes up, he still has leprosy. He goes down a second time, he comes up, he still has leprosy. He dips a third time, comes back up, still has leprosy. I would imagine by the fourth, fifth, or sixth time, the crowd has dispersed and nobody thinks he's that impressive anymore. He's just a man with leprosy, rinsing himself in a muddy ditch. But the seventh time, that in humility, Naaman leans down into that water, acknowledging, I can't heal myself. I can't do something grand and impressive. Doesn't matter if I can do a triple gainer out of a tree into the Euphrates, I'm still sick. Once he submits to the fact that I can't heal myself, God heals him that seventh time. And then is when that man recognizes, I'm not great. God is great. And he humbles himself. We talk about grace. We sing about grace. Some of you can exegete grace. But all too often we live as if it depends on us or as if we've already arrived. I'm fine. I don't need prayer. That's what a woman said to me recently at a conference. It's all I could do not to say back, you're going too soon as I kick you in the shins for being a liar. We all need grace, not just for salvation. We all need to be reminded we are not the hero of the story. Only God is. Here's the application point about Naaman's story. Naaman's story shows a surprising reversal. The enemy of Israel becomes a devoted worshiper of God. We can't predict whose hearts will be open to God's transforming power. And sometimes it is the people we least expect. God's love and his will are amazing and surprising. Naaman also models the gratitude and generosity of spirit that should accompany repentance and true faith. Rather than being selfish with our praise and gifts to God, we must be selfless. I want to be defined the way the application says Naaman was defined after God healed him, with gratitude and generosity. This isn't a rule book. This isn't a book that if we fill in all the blanks, then we too can achieve greatness. This is a love story that reminds us over and over and over again that the God who breathed our universe into existence calls us his beloved kids, not because of our capacity, but because of his compassion.